Okay, bear with me just a second and I will share my screen. Oops, straight to that today. That's good. Okay. Right. Okay. So coming up to the end of module 4 now. And if you see, there you go. It's Helene coming in. What we're going to do today is we're going to look at the goal and achievement plan, which some of you might have already had a little bit of a peek at the end of module 4. Another little suggestion that you can use as a general, which will sort of basically cover power within me suggestions, which you might be able to integrate into some of the things that you're going to be doing next. Oh, I've just had another one there. Okay, yeah, Claire isn't going to be with us tonight either. So another message there. Okay, and then we're going to go into the assignment surgery for module 4. Okay, so just moving on with setting goals. So the goal and achievement plan, which is something that Andrew's devised as a way of us helping our clients to sort of have somewhere to go, something to aim for, but also helping us to know how we can help them the most. So clearly from the learning outcomes in the diploma in general, part of the importance as our role as a therapist is to help our clients set meaningful goals. And that might mean anything in terms of what people want to achieve. What that obviously helps us to do is help them. So we know exactly what they want to achieve. And that very much relates to, you know, at the very basic level, finding out what they don't want, what they do want, which we've been working with. And it also allows you, if you're working with them over a period of time, to sort of monitor where that's going. You know, are they actually making progress? And one of the things I find I quite often do is I might actually sort of literally at a certain point say, right, okay, so when you first came to see me, you were feeling this, 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 and this is what you wanted to achieve, and kind of actually point them to where they are now so that they can see what sort of progress they're making. But obviously that's something we need to be checking in with them all the time while we're working with them to see how, you know, how they're doing. Are they working towards these goals? And a lot of the GAP plan, or whatever you want to call it, the goal and achievement plan does, it kind of helps us to get there step by step, as you'll see as we go into it in a little bit more detail. So some of the things that you need to do when you're working with your client, and I'm sure you were already beginning to feel this when you were doing the sessions on Monday and over the last few weeks, is finding out what they want and taking some notes about what they want to achieve, what they don't want to achieve, what some of those statements, those more negative statements, which kind of lead us down into those core beliefs that might be stopping them getting that goal that they're working towards. So in the same way as you've been using your sort of fluid questioning and the natural clean language and so on, you're feeding back also what information you're getting to them. And you know, you're all starting to really do this really well, sort of taking on board what somebody said, delivering their words in a sense back to them, so that you are confirming as well that you've understood what it is that they really want. Now, in terms of the goals that they might want, and this could be a whole range of things, you know, on a very sort of basic level, it could be just that I want to lose 3 stone in the next 6 months or something like that. It could be that I want to be healthier and I want to get fit. This could be just very general things. But quite often you're going to find a lot of these will be based on a feeling. What is it that they need to feel in order to achieve what it is that they want to do? So just let Mike in there. So you're trying to keep those goals that they're working towards as positive and also sort of specific, so that you can break down what it is they want to achieve into smaller, more manageable tasks and steps. So in effect, creating a strategy for them to actually get there. You know, it's a bit like if we do, well, at the beginning of this course, for example, you might look at it and think, oh, how am I ever going to get to that? And it all seems a little bit overwhelming. But when you start to break it down into smaller, more manageable sort of steps and goals, then it all starts to come together, and you just start doing it, don't you? You just start working with it, and then suddenly somewhere along the line you sort of check in with yourself and you think, oh, actually I know this, and I'm already a fair bit down that path. So really, really important to try and make those small manageable steps to help them achieve what it is that they ultimately want to achieve. Talking to them about how you're going to know, or how they will know, probably more importantly, when they've resolved that issue. So that might be in relation to how that's going to make them feel. What is it that it's going to give them at the end of that? What is it that they want to feel, and what is it they want to achieve? And when you've resolved that, how are you going to know that you're actually there in some sense of the word? Also setting them perhaps tasks to go through that they could be sort of reporting back to you with in each session that you see. And what's really important, and this is important in any, sort of with any client that you work with, that they understand that it's a collaborative process. This isn't just something you are going to do to them or for them. You are working with them, and they need to be motivated and sort of very engaged with you in that process. You will find people will come into you sometimes and say, if you could just hypnotize me to do this, and we all know that it doesn't work quite like that. So very much making your client understand that this is a two-way thing. They have a role to play in this too, very much so, and you are going to facilitate and help them to succeed in that. Also quite important, if you can, and again, it depends what this is that they're trying to achieve, to establish some sort of realistic timescale. So if somebody comes to you and they do come with a weight issue, for example, and they want to lose 3 stone in 2 months, then maybe you might want to manage their expectations, and also to think about what's that going to give them at the end of that, because so often you'll find with weight loss, people will come to you and they've already done this many, many times, and they've achieved it, and it goes backwards. So something's sticking somewhere. Sarah, you wanted to ask a question.
Yes, please. What if someone comes and it's just a bit more general, if they're just sort of like, I just want to feel happier in my life, or like, I just want my life to be better. Do you know what I mean? Like if it's a bit more like less.
It's quite likely that could happen.
Yeah.
That's where you use your clean language and fluid questioning to dig down into what's happy. What would that be like?
And could you like could you do like multiple goal achievement plans for one person? Like if they just generally want to feel happier, that might mean like they want more financial stability, they want to be like have better relationships, be more healthy. They could have like multiple. Would you do
Well,
multiple?
when we get to the actual structure of the goal and achievement plan, we might see how that could all come together in some way, because it is very likely that somebody might just come in
Yeah,
and say, I feel a bit meh, I don't know
exactly.
what's up.
Yeah.
I'm not happy. I don't know why I'm happy, not unhappy, not happy. And you would then dig down into what that was a bit more. But their ultimate goal might be that I just want to feel more energetic and happy with myself. And
Mm.
then the strategies, the small steps, if you like, that we'll get to, will help them to get to that feeling. Because ultimately, quite often when people come into you and they want a certain thing, and I had a client a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying, I really want to be able to get a Rolex, and I want to have the big fancy car and the big house and all the rest of it. But there's feelings beneath that, isn't it? Because when you
Mm.
get that, is that going to make everything okay then? Are you
Mm.
actually going to be happy? And that's where you're questioning and working with them will find out what's the actual ultimate feeling beneath that. What is it they need to feel in order to get what it is they want?
Mm.
And then sometimes you'll find that what they've set out wanting, they don't want at all. They actually just want the feeling that that would give them. I mean, it's something that is very, very typical. People will come and say, well, I'm a size whatever now, and I just want to be a size 8. And when I'm a size 8, I know everything's going to be fine. But they've been a size 8 before, but it wasn't. So that's where you're going down to find out a little bit more. Does that answer your question? I think it will come clearer actually as we break it down, and you'll see how these stepping stone boxes that are part of the goal and achievement plan will help them to get that overall goal. And it could just be, I just want to feel happy.
Yeah.
And that might be down to lots of different things. So, but yeah, absolutely, people will come with just something very general like that. And it isn't
Mhm.
general, really. It's quite big, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. It's quite it's big, so it
Yeah,
feels like would you need to do like multiple things? But yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
But that is ultimately the goal. Will be a mix of ultimate, lots of little things, if you like, that will lead up to that goal. Because I think sometimes when people come with a goal, it's this massive goal up here somewhere, but actually that needs to be broken down into a series of things, and some of that
Mm.
might be those other things, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So if that's still not clear as we go, come back to me. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So Andrew's put together this goal and achievement plan, known as the GAP, and it's about helping people to achieve the goals. Now we can all, as I said, we can all achieve goals. If you do a degree course and you think I want a degree, at the end of that seems like a massive task, doesn't it? And in some ways, when you first start on that mission, it feels almost unachievable. So that big goal needs to be broken down in some way. Because if ultimately you're always going for that massive goal and you're not thinking about all the different bits that you might need to do and how you might need to feel to get there, it almost makes you feel like you could be a failure already before you even start, because it feels too big. And that can then trigger some of those core beliefs, like I can't do it, I'm not enough, I'm out of control, I can't do all of this. There's all these different things that it could trigger. And what we want to do is avoid that happening. So it's basically trying to stop it so that the goal isn't so big and so unattainable that it just doesn't become realised. So what we do is we try to break that down into almost smaller dreams, if you like, smaller goals, so that we can actually reach that sort of outcome that we're looking for. So what the goal and achievement plan does, although we ultimately will have that big goal, or your client will have that big goal, which could be as simple as I just want to feel like I'm good enough and I'm happy, or whatever. It could be something like that. It takes the focus away from that big end goal by creating or helping them to create the right conditions to allow that to come about. So even if you think about when we were doing the don't want, do want, we had that gap in the middle, didn't we? So it's like, I want to be, I don't want to be like this, I do want to be like that. Something in the middle here is stopping me. So ultimately, you will quite often reach core beliefs while you're questioning your client and what to actually do this. But what you want to do is keep them in a positive frame of mind so that this goal isn't so big, it just feels unattainable. So there's two sort of stages to this. There's the dream itself, which could be very big, and that's okay. And then there's that stepping stone process, which are basically the steps that will help create the conditions that will allow them to get where they need to go. Okay. And what Andrew's done is he's put together lots of different methods and sort of goal setting, coaching methods, and so on that he's used over the years, together in this idea of creating sort of a goal and achievement plan by breaking it all down. I mean, it's not rocket science, really. It kind of makes sense that you would do that, but it is about creating the right conditions and creating the right mindset in order to work towards that goal, rather than just looking at something that's so huge that almost you give up before you start, which sometimes can happen. So the end result, here we are. If you've got a diagram here in your handbook, but as an example of it here, your dream vision would be whatever your client comes up with once on, in questioning what it is they really, really want. And it doesn't have to be something amazing. It's just what's important to them, whatever their dream or vision would be. So that can be almost as big as you like in that top box. But then you've got examples here, and it doesn't have to be these exact things, of things that you might need to do to create those conditions. So, for example, if it was about somebody that maybe wanted to lose weight, and they had an emotional eating issue, things they need to address, if you like, those stepping stones are a series of different things they might need to achieve to get to that. So they'd need to perhaps look at their health, look at what they're eating, what actions they might take towards that, how they might need to change their attitude. Very importantly, obviously, what their beliefs and emotions are now and what they would want them to be, and what that might mean to their identity, how that might change how they feel about themselves. So you're, in a sense, you're helping them to bring about a sort of a new reality by creating some sort of identity shift, seeing themselves differently. And that will really, really help them to create that idea. But it's a way of breaking it down, if you like. And as I said, you might not use these exact headings. I would suggest when you do the task, which I believe is in the module for you to create this, that maybe work with those for now, unless you have ones that just sit better with you in some way. But it's about creating that vision. And I think what I'd suggest for all of you when you do this in the assignment is perhaps use the course, or it might be something else that you've got, but it might be, I want to complete this course and I want to be a successful hypnotherapist, or whatever it is that you decide. And that could be quite specific about how you might want to do that. But there's all sorts of things it could be. It might be as simple as, I just want to have a really good and loving relationship. Anything that is for you a main goal, and then look at all those different areas and break it down into a series of steps, which will help you to work towards that sort of particular vision. So if you think of those stepping stones, what they really are, they're your strategy. They're your, the tactics to help you create the right conditions. And that might be about changing your mindset, and it usually will be, in order to make that goal or vision come about. So, and the thing about this that is so positive is that the minute you have them starting on those stepping stones, it's like that sort of, don't do it all at once, don't try and do everything. Actually, let's just break this down. And if you can just do one thing every day that might start to make a difference, then you're already on a successful path. So already they're working towards something they want, rather than focusing on what they haven't done, or focusing on how far they have to go. They're focusing on the fact they've actually started. So, in a sense, they've just started moving. So it makes them feel already like they're achieving something. They're feeling more successful, even though they haven't achieved that ultimate vision and goal just yet. They started the journey, and that in itself will give them a really positive feeling, and it will improve their mindset. It will improve the quality of their life before they even get there. And I think quite often what people tend to do is that they create this massive goal, and then they go all out. Somebody that wants to get fit goes to the gym every day, completely slogs themselves, and then give up after a couple of weeks because it's just too much. But whereas if they just break it all down and do it at a much slower pace, already psychologically they're on a much more positive path, which is what Andrew refers to as the virtuous circle. Okay, so you're creating this virtuous circle which keeps them motivated. So they're focusing on what the good things they've done, rather than how much they've still got to do, or how far away that goal might be. By actually sort of creating these daily goals in the boxes. And even if you're doing this with your client, just while they're doing it and breaking it down, it all suddenly seems so much more manageable, seems so much more achievable. So already it's creating a much more sort of successful feeling in themselves. And it's, they're making progress already, which is a really, really positive thing. Now, obviously, any goal that people come with, as the script being 100% confident will say, you can never be 100%, you will get exactly what you want. And something I've found in practice quite often with clients is that what they thought they wanted, they didn't. So sometimes that does happen, and while they're on that path towards getting it, they find out actually, maybe they don't need to be a size 8, maybe they're quite happy being a size 12, or whatever it is they decide, but they maybe realise that ultimate goal isn't going to change everything. It's how they feel about themselves. and the emotions behind all of that. But going back to sort of guarantees, there's always going to be variables. But using that goal and achievement plan, you can just make them feel, and they will be, as if they're moving towards their goal. So therefore, they're getting closer and closer all the time. You know, it's a bit like thinking about going somewhere, but you just think about it and then you kind of think your way out of it, rather than just getting in the car and going, and you're already on your way. And this way, they're going to make some progress, even if they don't ultimately get that final goal, which I'm not saying they won't, they may well do, but they're already making progress. So it's a really, really positive way of breaking it down and just saying, you know, just one thing every day, maybe, or one thing every week. You know, just give up biscuits this week, and maybe next week, cut out something else, alcohol, whatever it is that they choose. And this particular approach is particularly good with something like weight loss, because it is something that you can track quite easily in that way. So it's quite a nice one to use for this sort of thing. So the way to develop that goal, I mean, I'm sure you've all come across the SMART sort of approach. So basically, specific. So you want it to be fairly specific what it is they want, something that is important to them, and is pretty focused, something that they can measure in some way, so they can actually guarantee that they're feeling something different, or something's noticeably different. Obviously achievable, even though it might seem like it's a long way initially, relevant to what they want, and obviously in some way time bound, and realistic again in that way. Okay, so setting goals that are important to them. So what you really want to do ultimately when you're working with clients on this is to find out exactly what it is that's inspirational to them. You know, what's inspirational to you, what's inspirational to somebody else might be very, very different. But it's finding something that is a big enough reason for them to have this. You know, something that is inspirational, something they can get excited about, something that they believe in. And you know, sometimes people do need some really, really big goal, because you know it's going to make them feel much more motivated to go towards what they want. But it will, in some sense, need to be something that is something they've got a good enough reason to work towards. And then that's when you break it down and make it something that they feel like they can achieve by breaking it down. And part of that might be that they need to make some sort of shift in their own identity in some way, a shift in the way they see themselves and perhaps see the world, in order to get to that thing that they don't seem to be able to quite reach at the moment, which is why they've come to see you in the first place. So that's really important, that it's inspiring to them to some degree, because they need to have enough incentive to actually do the work, collaborate with you, and work towards what it is that they really, really want. And finding out, is it actually what they want? You know, is it what they want, or is it perhaps something that somebody else is more important to them? You know, for example, I think I've used the example before where a chap came to see me about smoking. And when I asked him why did he need to give up smoking? He said, well, because his daughter and his wife wanted him to. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And he said, well, I think it's fine. So there was no way he was ever going to shift that habit until he decided that it was important to him. So it's about them having the motivation and the interest and a big enough reason themselves to change and to bring about that shift of an inner identity in themselves in order to work towards that particular sort of goal, if you like. And you know, you might sort of ask them questions like, well, you know, what would that be like? What would that be like if you could achieve this? How would life be different? You know, what would happen? What will happen if you don't achieve this? All of those sort of questions that I've already heard some of you asking these sort of questions in the session. So, really, really important to understand, are they just thinking that'd be nice, or are they really committed to this goal, and do they really, really want it? And if they don't, then maybe that needs to be adjusted in some way. And that's where digging into that goal again, what it is that they want, what their vision is, will be so important. What does that really mean? Like Sarah used the example earlier, if I just don't feel very happy, don't know what it is, then digging into that, and what does that really mean? What is it they really want? What is it they really want to feel there? And how committed are they to reaching that? And are they prepared to do the work to get there? So it's, there are definitely times here again where you're going to have to just keep digging, using your fluid questioning, using your natural clean language to get those answers to what they really, really want, which might be different from what they walked in the door saying. Okay, so just a few tips on when you're talking to your clients or each other on this. To initially, that goal, that vision can be as big as you like, really. So think big, but you're going to break it down, and you're going to dig into that. So if it's too general, dig into that, find out what that is. What does that really mean? It needs to be believable to them, and so that they can really believe that it might be possible. And you're going to make that feel even more believable by helping them to break that down into smaller sort of tasks, smaller boxes. A strategy you could use, and again, I think it might have been you, Marie, that had said this, which was a nice one, sort of use 3 positive feeling words or phrases to sort of summarize, what that would feel if you could achieve that. What would that be like if I could actually have that dream, that belief that I really want that? What would that be like? What kind of thoughts and beliefs do they have around this goal? What's that going to change for them? So if I can, say it is just I want to make so much money per month was their goal. What is that going to do for them? What's that going to make them feel? What beliefs will they have about themselves if they can achieve that? So use that to sort of dig around a little bit more. How will that change their lifestyle? How will that change how they see the world? What will their perspectives be? And again, something that's really, really important is be quite specific about how that's going to make them feel, because that will help them to sort of have the motivation to work on those stepping stones. So attitude, belief, all of that sort of thing is going to be so important as part of those sort of stepping stone boxes. And just a nice little inspirational quote there. Remember, what the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. So even if that goal is quite big initially, or seems like it's a long way away, it's keeping them in that positive frame of mind by creating those stepping stones with them. You're not creating them for them, you're working with them to do that. That actually you're going to keep that frame of mind, that virtuous cycle, if you like, to lead them towards what it is that they really, really want. Okay, so this is just a breakdown of how you create those stepping stones. And as I said, you can use these titles. The ones I'd say you definitely really probably need to stick with are obviously beliefs and attitude, really, really important. But the health and the exercise, the eating and the diet, that might work for what that particular goal or vision is, or you might have different titles for that. So that will be very much down to you. For example, if you're choosing something around the completing of the course and what you might want to achieve at the end of that, it might be slightly different in that way as to what you would want to actually sort of put into your boxes. But clearly, things like your beliefs, what you need to believe in order for your goal to be realised, really need to be quite important to actually understand what it is they really need to believe in order to reinforce the fact that they're moving towards that goal. And that can be about that sort of, as I said, that identity shift, that change of a new, sort of an old reality becoming a new reality, something that's going to be realised by doing that. So that identity shift, basically, who do you need to be in order for you to actually reach that goal and sustain that goal, depending on what that is. And what do you maybe need to release in order to do that? How do you need to be different? What do you need to feel like? What do you need to believe? All of these things are very, very important to help create those stepping stones in the first place. And this exercise in itself, you'll find, will be very, very motivating for them, just to be able to break it down in this way. Okay, just a few things here in terms of helping them to put it into practice. And I think when you're working with a goal achievement plan, it is an ongoing thing. You're not going to do this in one session, obviously, but is to encourage them to dedicate a certain amount of time to focusing their mind onto that. And that might be by helping them to create positive mantras about how they're going to achieve that goal, and then to put it to one side and literally just get on with it. And as you can see from the quote there, just saying that if you wish to win a bicycle race, it doesn't matter how much positive visualization you do, at some point you have to just get on the bike and start pedaling. So it's that sort of, here's my goal and aspiration, here's the strategy and the tactics for me getting there. Now I need to actually just start moving, because otherwise you're going to be stuck in the same place. And actually just to get them to start referring to those principles that the two of you work together on, to actually sort of develop into those stepping stone boxes. And to discourage them, just keep focusing on that end result, because you will get people that will continually look at that gap between where they want to be and where they are now, and that will encourage, that will mean they might lose heart. So the whole point of these boxes is to keep them on track, to feel like they're constantly moving, that something's constantly changing in some way. So just to make sure, as I said, that they have time each day, and it might be a very small amount of time each day, where they are just focusing on what they want and implanting that idea in their own mind, so that they can keep walking towards that new reality, if you like. Now, something I think we sort of kind of covered this a moment ago, but something that will happen when you're talking about this and when you're working through what it is that they want to achieve, it will almost certainly come to something around those core beliefs. And they will, in some sense, want to, as I say, it could be enoughness, safety, control, acceptance, pleasure. Ultimately, again, we want to achieve that enlightenment. That's what they're trying to achieve, whatever that particular goal might be. But those feelings will almost certainly be beneath the surface. And as I said, quite often, it actually is more about those feelings than it is the actual goal. Because if they can have those feelings, they can have what they want, whatever that happens to be. It's basically about keeping that good attitude, change of mindset, the motivation to just allow them to keep moving and to focus on their successes rather than the gaps. So each time that you would see them, to be checking in with, how that's going, and to focus on the good stuff that's happening. And, sort of the fact that they just keep moving, the fact that they keep achieving even just small steps, that's going to make them feel just that little bit better in some way. And it's going to make it all feel so much more achievable. Okay, so there's a quote here from Andrew saying, above all else, I choose peace. If we probe deeper, still into the reasons for each of the goals of these different areas of change, what we really want is peace. And what I have found is it makes, if you want to make a sense of peace your primary goal, whilst focusing on your everyday goals, it tends to put you into a better frame of mind for achieving them. And I then combine this with statements from the boxes and create a lot of mantras and suggestions, but remembering that above all, what we really want is peace. Okay, and I guess what that's really reminding us of is that it's not usually so much about whatever that end goal is. It's more that sense of the feeling beneath that, how you need to feel in order to have that. So, and the mantras and suggestions will be developed from those boxes. And again, don't feel that it's on you to create them. You are working together to do this. It's their words that will create those suggestions, and it's their words that will create those boxes as well. So your questioning and the information that you gather will help you to put this plan together. So as I said, it's not all on you. Okay, so before we move on to the power within you suggestions, any questions about the goal and achievement plan? No? You've got, as I said, in the in module 4, one of your questions, I believe, is to do one of these with somebody. Now, you won't always use the goal and achievement plan every time you see a client. It's just, for certain things, it will be very, very useful, particularly if it is a long-term thing. As I said, like weight loss or something they want to achieve, a long-term goal. It will be really, really good for that. And it is a way of breaking that down. So don't feel that every time you speak to somebody now, you have to come up with that, although you might find it very useful. But it's a good one for you to do with each other before you actually do the assignment. And, you can start to think about when you're working with a client, is it relevant? Is this, does it feel appropriate for me to help them to achieve, create some sort of goal and achievement plan?
So with the goal achievement plan, with the mini goals that you place underneath, if you were to write it out in a physical format, would you put sort of like an expression, like almost an affirmation underneath as to what they want to complete? Because obviously we got the headings, or do you just stick with the headings, or I didn't know whether it needed to be less vague or more vague?
The first time you work with it, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you there, Tom.
No, that's all right.
The first time you work with it, you might want to stick with those and do something that would fit into quite well. But I would imagine with most people that you're going to work with, you might want much more specific to what it is that they want to put in there. So health might not be an issue in somebody's plan, if you like. So, if you're talking about, I want to finish a certain qualification or something like that, it might be that isn't something that you need to address. But that's going to come out in your questioning as to what those headings need to be.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then your mantras, you can put those into the boxes, but it's more the content of those boxes that will be the mantras that you might create to help them to go towards that. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? No, as I said, certain things this will work better for than others, particularly if it's a big thing. If it's something that's going to take a while, or something that they're going to work towards, or maybe it's just a long way away, then something like this can be a really, really good way to just break it down. But it won't be every single person you work with that you would use something like this. It's just another tool, really, for you to be able to use in order to help break down something that could seem like a massive dream or a massive goal in some way. Or it could be somebody that's got where some of you have said that lots of people have got lots of core beliefs that are coming up. It might be that when there's a lot to do, and you can see over a period of time to achieve a certain way of feeling and being is going to take a while, then it could be very appropriate to use this sort of approach if it feels comfortable with you. Okay, it gives you a structure, and it gives them a structure too, and something to refer back to, and something as a kind of tool for you each time you see them to see where you are with that, and for you to make that very positive and to encourage them as to the progress that they're making as they go. Okay, so I shall move on to the next thing here. This is the final bit of module 4. It's something that Andrew developed and adapted from something that he'd seen, and it's a statement that you can just bring into some of your sessions when somebody has got something they need to achieve, which is generally what people are going to want to do in most of those sessions. The statement was, the challenges ahead are nothing compared to the power within you. And at the time he thought that's just such a really powerful phrase to use with clients. So he started to integrate that into the session. So it's almost like it's a kind of a mantra, really, that you're reminding people that it's all about you. The power's there. It's always there. Very much like the title of Andrew's book, The Real You. It's not something that you are going to do to them or anybody else is going to do. It's there within them. That power is there. So it's like quite an empowering statement for people. And it might be just part of many other mantras that you will handcraft with them, but just to give you that sort of, that sort of empowerment that they can do it. You've got the power within you. The challenges ahead are nothing compared to the power within you. So it can be a really, really nice statement. Now, this is just the script that Andrew uses. Now, you could start with this, but you can always change it slightly for yourself to adapt it. But the script itself is basically feel around for an area in your life that is challenging or seems difficult or is causing any kind of struggle, pressure, anxiety, or whatever it may be. And know with absolute certainty that whatever challenges lie ahead, they are nothing compared to the power within you. Whatever challenges lie ahead of you, they're nothing compared to the power within you. And you can remember that it's okay, if it's all right with you, my voice will go with you, but just being here with you, for you, supporting you and helping you, and encouraging you, reassuring you and reminding you, wherever it's useful and wherever it's appropriate, that whatever challenges lie ahead for you are nothing compared to the power that lies within you. Okay, so they're just quite a nice one that you can kind of drop into something that might have been quite a big session, and it's just a reminder of the fact that it's all there. So that's something you could drop in, and it doesn't have to be absolutely word for word. That's just a suggestion that Andrew's put in there as the script. And there's that my voice will go with you, which we've come across before, just being there with you, supporting you, helping you, encouraging you and reassuring you and reminding you. And it's just kind of very encouraging and sort of comforting and reassuring for the person that you might be working with. So that's one that you can start to integrate into sessions that we're going to do in coming weeks. And you might even want to use that as part of when you're doing your the gap plan as well. You might want to put that in there, just reminding somebody that this massive goal that perhaps they are working towards, that they're breaking down, that any challenges that are there, they're just nothing compared to the power within you. So it's just a nice little thing for you to add in if you would like to. Okay. Now, something you're going to be doing next week is to put it all together with some of these things here. So very similar to what we've been doing over the last few weeks, and we'll be doing this in the practice next week, is starting completely from scratch. So literally going right back to that building rapport, imagining that whoever you're going to be working with, that you've never met them before, and so do that little bit of rapport building, and then the initial chat, helping them to drill down into what they don't want, what they do want, looking for those core beliefs again, obviously using your fluid questioning, natural green language, feedbacks, and so on. Looking for any fears, looking for any emotional hotspots, and really beginning to try and get an understanding of what they need to think, believe, in order to get what they want, whatever that might be. If it seems appropriate for whatever the issue might be, the person you're working with, you might want to sit down and create a goal and achievement plan with them for this. That's not absolutely necessary for the session that we're practicing in next week, but it may well sort of come up. It might be an opportunity for you to try that. And then obviously the normal sort of hypnosis and deepener if you feel it's appropriate, and then delivering the sort of handcrafted suggestions and perhaps using something like the power within you before releasing the client. Okay, so quite a long session. The chances are that's going to take probably 45 minutes to an hour for most of you, much like the ones that we've been doing. So that's what we're working for towards next week. And again, as always, it's practice. So just go with what feels right. And perhaps what you might like to try on this is, I mean, you can read a script that you particularly like, but maybe try using one of your own, or maybe ad lib a little bit if you like, with the actual sort of induction and deepener for that. Just start to give yourself the confidence to do that. But there's no pressure. You don't have to do that if you don't feel ready for that. But you might want to do something that sits well with you. Because obviously I know quite a lot of you have been saying, well, I did that one, but that feels a bit clunky for me, or it doesn't feel quite right with me. So perhaps look at the script maybe that you might be thinking about using for an induction and deepener, and maybe adapt it for you so that it feels right for you, if you don't feel confident to just go in and ad lib. And that will start to feel a bit more authentic and real for you. Okay. So that's next week. Okay. So there'll be quite long sessions, and they might run over a period of time. Okay, so any questions before we move on to the assignment surgery?
Will the people that have missed out on the last one, because I know there are a couple of people who've been away, will they be missing out completely on what they were doing before and have to jump in on this, or?
I think with this, they're probably going to have to jump in, although they can obviously practice outside. It just means that won't be sort of with me here. But anybody that has, I think what I'll do is I'll put a note out to anybody that hasn't had that opportunity to make sure that they do practice that. But obviously we need to move on to the next.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So if
I didn't want them to not think about them and go, oh no.
Yeah, no, I mean, if there's anybody that you know has missed that, if any of you are willing to work with them on that, that would be really good. So that everybody has a go at doing that. And obviously the one you're doing next week is just a little bit of a step on. It's not a massive step on. It's just adding new things. So, but yeah, that would be really, really helpful. And what I'll do is I'll put an email out if there's anybody that does sort of want to practice that hasn't had the opportunity. And if anybody is happy to volunteer to do that, it's all good practice.
Yeah, exactly, definitely.
So you can do it again. But thanks for raising that, Tom.
That's all right.
Yeah. Any other questions? Does anybody want a quick drink break before I move on to this? Or a loo break? That looks like a yes, Erica.
Yes, please.
Yeah, and Sarah. Yeah, okay. So if we say, what is it now? It's just coming up to. If you can be back by 8, would that be okay? I'll give you a few minutes. Yeah, if you can be back by 8, and then we'll move on. Okay. Okay, so question 1, give 3 examples of deepeners and explain at what point in the course of the session you would use them. So anybody on that one? I'm quite happy with that one. So at what point do we use the deepener?
Just before affirmations, but obviously you want them to be aware, so it's quite difficult, really.
And aware. Why do we use a deepener generally?
Just to make them more relaxed if they need to be.
And to give us probably a greater access to the critical faculty. Yeah.
It's taking them down to that next level, isn't it? So that they are sort of literally more able to access, as you say, that sort of subconscious part of themselves, and being able to receive those affirmations. Or if we were working, when we will be sort of working with them and talking to them while they're in hypnosis, it's actually getting them to that point where they're going to be able to access some of that information without overthinking it.
So what does it mean when it says give us 3 examples? Because obviously there's like the counting.
Yeah, types of deepness. So
specific as to what we've learned.
Yeah, so something like, when I say types of, it could be a counting down, just generally counting somebody down. It could be the staircase deepener.
The lift.
there's quite a few different ones. I think you've got the rainbow, which is an induction and deepener.
Have we done that one?
We haven't actually practiced it. I think some people
Yeah.
have chosen it. I think, Sarah, you used it, didn't you, recently? The rainbow one, or was going to.
I've never heard of it.
I can't hear you, Sarah. You're turned down. Well, there you go.
No.
You're
Sorry.
There you go. You're doing my trick.
I forgot what I was going to say now.
About-
Oh yeah, I didn't even use it. Yeah, that was it. I used the tropical island one.
Right, that's it.
That was what I used.
You asked
But
me.
yeah, I was actually reading the rainbow one the other day. It's really nice.
Yeah, it is a nice one actually. That, yeah. So yeah, it is. It's about taking them down to that further level, really. But it's just use some examples of ones that we've come across, and yeah, that's all you're doing really. And looking for, I mean, you've got this written down here, about 300 words to cover that, but it might not be quite that. Okay. So question 2, a client tells a therapist something socially frowned upon, not murder, but something they've done and they've been involved in the past, and the therapist replies, well, I think that's terrible. What on earth did you do that for? Briefly describe why this is a rather inappropriate response, and what you think a more appropriate response would be. So what's your thoughts on that one? Obviously it's inappropriate.
Firstly, it's amazing.
Because they shoot the therapist.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, the reasons for not doing that, why would we not respond that
Well,
way?
because you're ruining any sort of connection between you and the client. So you're giving them no reason to trust you whatsoever.
Absolutely, yeah.
And probably
you're
pushing them further.
And
You're
it's
actually condemning them as well, aren't you, in a sense?
Yeah, it's totally judgmental, isn't it? So you certainly would not respond to that. Any suggestions how you might respond to that?
That was in the past, and that you're a new person now.
Yeah, I mean, you
We
don't
can
have to
move
make
on
it
from
right.
it.
You don't have to make it right. Obviously that's happened. It's more a case of just accepting that.
And obviously, depending on what it is, if you've wronged someone, obviously there are ways that you could correct that and sort of plateau the level the field slightly. But I mean, yeah, it all depends. Like if they stole something in the past, they can't exactly go, right, I'm going to go back into Bastin's that doesn't exist anymore and give them a £5 for the makeup I stole or whatever,
I mean, it specifically says not murder, so we're not talking about them harming anybody else as such. But obviously you remain non-judgmental, you listen, and you're there working for them at that point, aren't you? So
Could you ask them why they thought that why they're saying that? What made them do that? Or
what made the person do it?
Yeah.
You would question around it. Yeah.
Just question, their motives for actually saying it and doing whatever they've said they've done.
Yeah, you would you'd probably dig into that. What was that like? What was it? What feelings, emotions were around that? Sort of. You are, as I said, you are working with them. So just the most important thing here is really not to show judgment, and not to react like that. Clearly, okay. So that's a bit of an extreme one. We're looking for about, I think, 100 words on that. But you'd really be looking for what are the feelings and emotions, what's going on with them, and ultimately remembering, unless they're harming somebody else or at danger of harming somebody else or themselves, then you go with that, and work with them. Okay. Number 3, occasionally clients will inevitably trigger issues within you. Can you think of a few obvious ways that you might know that was happening, that you were being triggered?
If you got emotional,
Yes.
or upsets.
Yeah. So
Panic attack.
Yeah. Sorry, you were saying
panic attack, palpitations, sort of that sort of. Well,
yes,
I mean, this is very specific to myself, but yeah, I assume other people feel that too.
Yeah. So you might start to be feeling something going on in your body. You might be getting anxious. So there could be bodily things going on there as well. And perhaps getting a little bit over empathetic, almost wanting to sort of say, oh yeah, I know what you mean, sort of, so that feeling of doing that might be, realizing that perhaps you've been triggered in some way. So yes, there's physical signs as well. You could start sweating, there's all sorts of things that could happen that if it's triggering something in you. Okay, as I said again, 75 words-ish they're looking for. You're not looking for too much. Don't take these word counts as absolute. It is just so that you don't go too much one way or the other. Okay, so if you do notice that your own emotions are being triggered, can you think of a simple way to keep your own issues out of the session? So what you might be thinking of doing. So thinking about what would be the most useful thing to do. Obviously, something you need to do is remind yourself this is about the client, not you. So focus on the client. And if you continue to use the clean language and the fluid questioning, it keeps it about them. Yeah. So it's not about you, it's about them. And you can just stay in their zone, if you like. And also it might be something that you might take to your supervisor as well, if you were struggling with that. If you were working with somebody that was continually triggering you in some way, then it might be advisable for you not to work with them if it was too much. So it could be something you might take to supervision.
What would they say about that?
What would they say?
Yeah, would they recommend that you have that sort of therapy yourself in that area, or would they more go, okay, well, we'll try and avoid that sort of area?
Well, in a way, you can't avoid that area if you're working.
No, exactly. That's it.
So if you can't handle it and you're finding it's too much, then your supervisor would probably advise you not to work with them.
Okay.
So, and I mean, on most therapy courses, you are advised to have some form of therapy anyway. So it could be that you then go off and get some therapy yourself to help you with that, to help you then deal with that client, because it's obviously something you know that's there that you need to deal with. Yeah, if it became too much, if it was very, very serious and it was really triggering you majorly, then you're not the best person to be working with them, really, are you? Okay. Right, number 5, in a therapeutic environment, a client is often expected to reveal all sorts of personal and intimate information to you, whilst you reveal very little to them. What sort of boundaries do you think are good to set? And it's listed here physically, informationally, and can you think of a reason why setting boundaries is helpful for positive transference? So start with the first one, physically. To keep those boundaries there, what sort of things would you be careful of?
Not touching them.
Yeah. Anything else?
Them not touching you?
That's a difficult one, isn't it, actually? Because if somebody is a very touchy person, it's kind of, you don't want to be jarring them either. It is a difficult one. But generally we wouldn't touch.
The word physical is such a peculiar one in this environment as well, isn't it? It just almost implies that they're just going to strip naked or something. It's like, whoa.
Okay. So
Sorry.
what about informationally?
Giving information about other clients?
We definitely wouldn't do that. Absolutely.
Don't share private information about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, why do you think that is? Because there's a part of you, you're thinking, well, they're sharing all this stuff. And there are some therapists that do in some fields of therapy. But why do you think it's a bad thing to share information about yourself?
Well, it can lead to a level of transference, can't it? Because if they think that they've developed a relationship with you that actually you haven't, because you are still their therapist, you can end up in all sorts of tricky situations. Yeah,
absolutely. And you do hear of things where people fall in love with their therapists, or they think they're their friend, and that sort of thing. So you do, it keeps it. It's not because you want to keep a distance. It's a professional distance, but also it keeps that level of authority of you as the therapist, rather than a vulnerable person like them, which of course we all are. But yeah, it keeps that level of professional distance. And also, from a safety point of view, it could be that you might need to protect yourself if somebody if somebody did get a thing about you or something. I'm sure we've all seen films like that where these sort of things happen. So there's that to consider as well. So things that it says in there: touching, self-disclosure, and just professional boundaries. They're the things you need to think about. Okay, so just a few sentences on that. List reasons why you may have unaccompanied clients, sort of things that, where you might.
Sorry, Debbie.
Yeah.
Sorry. So just to be clear on point 3.
Yeah.
Basically, points 1 and 2 sort of help to avoid positive transference. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So can you think of a reason why setting boundaries is helpful for positive transference? So it's all the reasons why you wouldn't do it, really, but think about why that. It kind of just, it gives you a sense of authority, and then looking up to you, believing you, and sort of, it creates that as well. So that's a reason to have that, and it's better for you as well. I have had the odd situation where I've got somebody that keeps thinking they can keep sending me messages all the time, and obviously there's times when you might say, send me a message and let me know how you're doing, or let me know how that went. But I had a situation quite early on when I started where I think I'd said that thing. I'd said, I'll send you a message in a couple of days, see how you're doing. Did that. And I said, if there's anything really significant that you want to share about a shift or a change, just let me know. And this lady was WhatsApping me every day. And it was long messages that you then felt obliged to answer, which of course you didn't have time to answer. So there was a boundary there that I needed to have set, and it had kind of, she'd overstepped it, and in the end, we did solve it. But it was a bit of a, oh good, you're my new best friend. I'll tell you everything every day. And then you've got that situation where you're feeling like you've got to keep responding. So it is setting that boundary. Okay, is that
so what did you do?
With that particular lady, it was she actually overstepped quite a few boundaries because she was doing it with time as well. And it was, as I said, it was very early on, and it was triggering me actually, because it is one of my things that I do tend to over deliver, and I was letting the time go on and on and on. And as I said, I hadn't been doing it very long at that point. And I didn't know how to finish the sessions quick enough because she'd just keep going and going and going, and it was stressing me out. And I remember she came in to book another 3 sessions, and I was like, whoa. And I actually said, I think we've done all we can do. And I actually moved her on in the end, and it was all fine. And I was just like, I think it's time. She was one of these clients, I think, that just wanted to come and tell her story over and over and over and over and over, and didn't really want to change that. That was kind of her narrative. And, we were making progress, but she didn't want to go in alone and didn't want to take it further. So, yeah, we moved, we left on good terms. It wasn't a bad thing, but I sort of said, I think, we've done everything we need to do now. I think you need to take the tools and you need to do this. And I went, oh, phew.
And changed your mobile phone number.
Yeah, so occasionally you will get that. And I think another one I had quite early on was somebody that had come to me about food. It was, I need to lose weight, and it turned out she was an alcoholic, and I was getting late night texts when she was drunk, and things like that. So that was another instance where I sort of said, I think, hypnotherapy is probably a very good thing for you, but maybe not with me. So you do get it sometimes. Hasn't happened very often, mainly at the beginning, and I think that was probably my own lack of confidence in setting my own boundaries at that point.
I have mine on my agreement, so there's no contact in between sessions unless it's regarding appointments.
That's a good idea. That's a very good idea, actually. I might add that. That is a very good idea. Because it was something for me, that it was something I did as a university lecturer as well. I would give too much of my time outside of time. And it was just like, this is telling me something I need to deal with here. But thank you for that, Marie. That's a really good idea, actually. Good idea for anybody, actually, to make that. Because you will contact them sometimes. And I know even Andrew will say, a couple of days later, he might check in with somebody, particularly if they've had quite a traumatic session and they've had a big reaction. You might check in with them a few days later. But I think that's a really good thing to put in there. Thank you.
It's fine to check it, you know, things like dental might be more than one session, or and they may come back and let me know, but sometimes you will get someone that will try to overstep the mark, and you just have to gently remind them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. Thank you for that. That's a good one. Okay, where do we go to? So list 3 reasons why we may have an accompanied client. Going back to that one. Anybody think of those? Why you might have an accompanied client?
Might have a child.
A child, yeah, absolutely.
Someone with a disability.
Yes, could be a disability. Yeah, if it was a learning disability or something like that, it's unlikely to see them because we might not be able to help them because of the level of their understanding. So therefore, probably wouldn't be able to help. But yes, somebody with a disability. Anything else that you can
Would the police escort anyone for psychiatric reasons if you were to be talking, or would that be out of your realms of expertise?
I haven't come across that. I'd have to ask that question. I don't know if anybody else has. Marie, have you come across anything like that?
No, usually that would only be in prison.
Yeah,
where
I've never come across that.
Counsellors. For the police station, they generally call them in, call you in.
Yeah, I mean, that does lead me to actually sometimes another reason you might have an accompanied client is if there was somebody that you were a little bit unsure of, somebody that, you know, you felt uncomfortable with in some way.
So it's accompanied on your side rather than their side.
Yeah, so that could be another reason. Okay, what do you understand by the term fluid questioning? And give a summary of each of the components and give examples. I don't think I need to ask you that, do I? It's what we've been doing for the last few weeks. So, what I mean, if anybody was to sum up what fluid questioning is, what would you say?
Easy questions to help sort of delve deeper into what they want and what they don't want. It's sort of really hard to put into words, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what's ultimately about when we talk about the fluid questioning, the clean, natural?
It's like probing open-ended questions.
Yeah, open-ended, and they're very, very much
very neutral.
Very neutral.
Very neutral.
It's all about them. Everything we do, which again,
and very personable as well.
Pardon?
And very personable as well. So it's very about them, not about the the thing.
And they're also, I mean, they're a good way for us to delve down. They sort of keep opening up what's going on, but it's a good way to avoid transference as well. So it keeps it about them. So it's all about keeping it completely specific to the client. So in that particular question, you just give a summary of each of the components. So those 4 different parts we went through, and you know, what is it, and just examples. So you know, that's quite a straightforward one, and it's all there for you, and you've been doing it. And you've been doing it really well. So, okay. What's the difference between implied and informed consent? So you just need to give an explanation of both, a couple of sentences, a very short one. So anybody on implied consent and informed consent? Marie, you look like you're going to say something.
If you have a teenager and their parents ask, have they turned up?
Yes.
You would ask the teenager, are they happy for their parents to know whether they've turned up or not?
Right, yeah.
So, but implied for your own safety, you usually want it in writing. Or if somebody comes in and says that they imply they're on a specific drug, but they haven't completed what antidepressant they're on or what.
Yeah. You
kind of have to cover yourself in those circumstances. I do a lot of private medical cover, so a 20-year-old or an 18-year-old might be on mum and dad's insurance, and mum and dad will want to know whether they're turning up. And I obviously can't break confidentiality without the client's permission, even although it's mum and dad's policy.
Yeah, so you've got 2 things at stake there.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah, you can ask something there.
No, sorry, I'm still confused. So like informed consent, just like more generally would be when you have written consent for what though?
Could be all
I don't
sorts
get
of
it.
things. I mean, in a sense, your consent forms, you know, your sort of client forms will, you know, somebody signed off and given you information about various things. In a sense, that's informed, isn't it? It's not just implied.
So it's like they've consented to the therapy?
Yeah, well, I mean, on depending on what your statement says, it's they've kind of agreed to that. They've consented to perhaps hypnosis, and there's no guarantees, for example, that sort of thing. So that would be informed. Implied would be, I'm trying to think of an example actually. Help me out here, Marie. Think of an example of implied.
Well, it could be like I've just said, where somebody says, yes, you can tell my mum.
Yeah.
And to cover myself, I'll say, can you just sign to say that? Because if they leave my session and say I didn't give permission for my mum to know,
yes,
then AXA PPP can actually say to me, well, you broke confidentiality. It's the same as, you know, working in agencies and things like that.
If they've put that in writing, that then becomes informed consent, surely.
Yeah.
So what would...
Well, implied in the session might be, are you happy to go ahead with this? They're implying that they're happy to go ahead with it. And because they're a consenting adult and you have certain things on your form, you'll feel comfortable with that implied consent. If somebody starts to cry, something traumatic's happened to them, and you know they at some point, it looks like you might be digging up something that's happened years ago that they may or may not want to go into. You ask them, is it something they want to talk about? Is this something they want to resolve in the session? And if they say yes, that's implied. We haven't got, oh, yes, he or she was attacked several years ago.
Yeah.
They haven't got that much detail on their form. So by saying yes, they're consenting, and it's implied consent.
Does that make sense? Yeah, so it's kind of informed is more official, basically. Informed consent.
Yeah, so it's kind of implied would tend to be a verbal agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Thanks for the example as well. Okay. Okay, I think that's the last one, other than the practicals. So your practical assignments, to do your own goal achievement plan, and sort of pair up with another student. But you might be doing some of that next week anyway, which was something you can use as an example. And then just continue to practice your fluid questioning. In the assignment, it says here for 3 different people, but I'd say practicing it on as many people as you can, and just write up your experience. But again, that all goes into the reflective practice journal, so you don't need to send that off with the assignment. You just refer to the fact that it will be in the reflective practice journal, and that can go in nearer the end. So you've got plenty of time to do that. So that's basically assignment module 4. So that's not too bad. So that's quite a short one compared to some of the others, isn't it? So considering it's taken a few weeks to go through, that's actually reasonably short. Any further questions about module 4? All quite happy with that? Okay.
Debbie, you know the next question where it says practice fluid questioning on 3 different people?
Yeah.
So, I mean, can we say see reflective journal? Because obviously we've just been writing up about them, you know, from what we've been doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, anything like that. Any of the practical assignments, you don't need to hand that in as you go. Just refer them to the RPJ. And then, you know, you'll probably have a note of that somewhere, but you can write it up fully nearer the end when you hand that in. So, okay. So we've got, as I suspected, about half an hour left. So if you're happy for us to split into 2s, I think today, just to start to practice, again, practice the fluid questioning again. So you've got more of that, but just with in mind, whoever's acting as the client, to see if there is a way that perhaps you can look at putting together some sort of gap plan. So don't worry about the whole session, but just getting to think that way. Presumably you've all got your notes on that nearby, so you can actually look at that and just start to see how that might unfold if you were working with that. Okay, so don't, as I say, don't expect to complete a whole thing. It's really just a bit of practice and seeing how you might integrate that into a particular sort of issue that somebody might present. Okay, you all happy to do that? Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to divide you. How many have we got? So Eve and Deville are just listening. So I need at least, right, we're going to be slightly odd numbers, aren't we? 1, 2, 2, 3 twos actually. And then Eve and Deville will listen in on 2 of those. Okay, so I'll just do that for you now. Right, just pause that.